Hey everybody, how's it going? So I haven't been able to upload the hearing yet because, again, I'm traveling and the internet here is completely and utterly useless. So there have been three things that have really gotten me to realize that I'm in Bizarro world. The first is that when I showed up to Maryland, the Republicans were very, very warm to the idea of this bill. It was actually several influential Democrats, including C.T. Wilson, that were against right to repair fervently. Now, one of the things I've said many times in my older videos, this is not a partisan issue. This is not a Democrat versus Republican issue. This is a, do you understand what I'm saying, or are you misinterpreting what I'm saying because the opposition lobbyist got your attention better than I did, kind of thing. That's been my experience, not party. But that was the first thing that just kind of seems, it's probably going to seem Bizarro world to my audience. The second thing here is that what I learned about Minnesota is that one of the senators, the head of consumer protection, is run a car dealership, and he's in charge of consumer protection. And surprise, surprise, he thinks right to repair is something that shouldn't pass. Mind blown. The third was that I wasn't allowed to record in the Senate. I was allowed to record in the House, not in the Senate. They demanded that I produce a press pass. They said, well, you know, okay, so this one woman said, send me some stuff and I'll see what I can do for you. So I said, okay. I have broadcast training from Avatar Studios. Here's me recording Boston State House hearing. Here's me recording Nebraska State House hearing. Here's Maine hearing. Here's 2 Albany press conferences I showed, the ones that didn't have, you know, commentary or anything like that, just clean recording. And as you can see, they look good. They went very cleanly. I know how to plug into the equipment. I'll be on the side. I won't make any noise. And they said no. And she actually gave me a piece of paper and it listed who's allowed to get a press pass. And I forget everything it said on them. It was something like, your purpose here is solely for the purpose of disseminating news, and you're not trying to influence the outcome of any election. Great, so Fox, MSNBC, and CNN are not going to be allowed to plug into your patch panel, I presume. And they rejected me for that. When I did get to testify in the Senate, I noticed that there was nobody plugged into the patch panel. So I'm really, really glad that they were able to ensure that that press table was not being used by anybody that didn't have a press pass. Surprise, surprise. Nobody, like, news crews don't show up to cover these really small hearings that cover local issues like this. They don't. That's why people like me show up. But I can't get a press pass for every effing city in the country. That's not, like, if you want me to get one press pass, you want me to get one federal press pass that covers me going into Hawaii legislature, Nebraska legislature, the House in Maryland, the Senate in Maryland, the Assembly in New York, the Senate in New York, I'll do that, but there's no way in hell that I'm signing up for 300 to 400 to 500 press passes and applying for all of those. That's not something that I as one person can reasonably be expected to do. So what we do is we show up, and typically what we do is we pray and hope that we can just walk in and nobody's going to bother us. And usually that works when you show up with that 18 to 200 millimeter lens and a Sony NEX-EA50 with your Sennheiser HD 280 headphones on and your laptop, and you look technical and you're dressed properly. Most people just leave you alone. But there's that small percentage of people that are like, we demand a press pass, we want a press pass. If you don't have it, we're kicking you out of here. And that is what they did. And Jessa brought up a very good point, which is that you actually shouldn't ask for permission, which I found interesting. She said by asking for permission, all you're doing is you're making people nervous. You're making them think that, well, why is he asking for permission? CBS doesn't ask for permission. NBC doesn't ask for permission. They just go and plug in. You must be dumb. And it worries them. And you could see the look on this woman's face. She was genuinely looking at me the exact same way that my kindergarten teacher used to look at me when, I remember Mrs. Merlino, when I said that I wanted to get on top of the monkey bars. I didn't want to do a pull-up on it. I wanted to do a push-up on top of it, which meant I had to stand on top of it. She looked at me with that exact same look. She's like, you want to record? Well, like, who are you? Where are you from? Why do you want to record? I want to record because you're a goddamn legislative building and nobody else is going to do it if I don't do it. Or it's just going to go up to your legislative website where there's no download button, so I can't download it and re-upload it, and nobody watches it there. There's probably 3 people that watch the hearings on your state website. So you put together this lovely patch panel and system that nobody can plug into, and when the hearings do go up, they go on a website that, like, nobody watches, which is why I want to make my own, and I'm more than happy to make my own. So I show up and I testified in the Senate hearing, and it was funny. This one woman went to plug in her phone over the patch panel, and that one woman that told me I couldn't record, she was staring down, that woman, like, don't you dare touch my patch panel. I looked at the patch panel and I got up for a moment, and she immediately just stared at me like, don't you effing dare. I will run over this table and, you know, and just like rip that right out of your hands if you try to plug something in there. Then I left, and here's the best part of Bizarro World. So someone was helping me walk over to the Senate building from the House building, because I'm not from there. I don't know exactly where all the buildings are located. It's actually very confusing to try and speak at any of these. Because one of the things that they did, thank you Maryland legislature, is that the House and the Senate had the exact same bill, and they listed at the same time. They're both being heard at 1 o'clock. And then, without any sort of written or email notification or updates on the website, it got changed to 2, then to 2:30. The Senate went so far over that they didn't hear that bill until 4 o'clock. How do you figure out which room you're supposed to be in at which time? Great question. What you do is you run back and forth between the buildings about 14 times, the way Erica and I did yesterday, and hope and pray that when your name gets called, you're not missing. I got called to testify for the farm right to repair bill, but nobody showed up because I was testifying in the Senate right to repair bill after the House right to repair bill for non-farm equipment. So there was House right to repair, Senate right to repair, House right to repair farm equipment. And nobody showed up in the House bill for the right to repair farm equipment. Nobody showed up. Why? Because we're probably all in the other effing room. It's like, I can't believe a legislature is run like this. It's just, even with my most libertarian leanings and pessimism regarding government, I just can't imagine that a legislature is run like that, where you have two bills that are for the same general thing, that are in two different buildings, so that at the very least one of them is not going to get any testimony from people. It just absolutely blows my mind how badly that is run. And the best part about it is that when I was speaking to one of the assistants, this is the best part, this is the best Bizarro World part here, that was talking to me, and she's actually very helpful. I forget her name, I wish I got her name. She was helping me figure out where the House and the Senate buildings are and all the rooms were. When I talked to her about the not being able to record, she just looked at me and said, yeah, that sounds like some patriarchal bullshit. That sounds like some patriarchal bullshit. And then I said, you know, the person who said that I wasn't allowed to record,
I don't mean to be frustrating at all.
Her name's Tammy.
I'm willing to go anywhere.
Just saying. It's a woman.
An hour away.
So yeah, about that patriarchy. Because the funny thing is that none of them. I'm just like not trying to start some sort of gender war. I'm just saying it wasn't a guy that told me that I'm not allowed to record because I don't have a little piece of paper that says I can. It was a woman. So I'm going to be editing the House testimony. I honestly don't think I gave great testimony yesterday. I think it was really bad testimony. It was kind of exhausting having to run between the two buildings, setting up the camera stuff, but the real part here is, honestly, when you're coming up to speak first and you don't have any opposition to reply to, and you see that little 2-minute timer with a little buzzer that goes off, it really screws with your head. And one of the things that I learned from this is that it's just not a very dignified way to represent yourself to government. So there were people that had legitimate grievances with the bill, but I'm not allowed to go up because I already spoke, so I can't respond to them. I can't speak to them outside of that hearing because if I email them, they will ignore my email and they won't reply. I emailed every single senator. I got a response from one saying they wouldn't be able to make a meeting, and none of the other ones got back to me. But of course they read all of the CTA's emails, as you heard in Maine. Of course they do. I don't know how to get on that magical special list that just gets outside of their spam filter. But I think I gave pretty poor testimony yesterday. The star testimony was actually a kid named Sam that I intend to upload. He's 16 years old and he outspoke me. He just did a fantastic job of making the point as to how this has economic benefits, how it's safe, and what we're asking for, very clear and concise, in the 2-minute limit. And that, again, I screwed up. I did a bad take yesterday. It really wasn't good. You probably saw it when you streamed. But like when you see that there's that 2-minute timer, I have all the stuff in my head that I want to get out. And I have two choices when I see that 2-minute timer. Either A, I speak at a speed that's going to cause them to ignore me because they say I speak too fast, or B, I'm only able to articulate 15% of what I wanted to say. You know, there are people that will often say, why don't you mention this when you show up at a hearing? Why don't you mention that when you show up at a hearing? What I don't think they realize is that you're given 2 minutes, and there's a little annoying buzzer that goes off if you go over 2 minutes. And in some places they don't enforce it, but here they were, because there were people that were going over. One guy, I think, went over by about 10 or 20 seconds, and they told him, you know, we got to keep it moving, we got to keep it moving. That's not a way to discuss complex issues. You can't discuss the complexities of economics. You can't express the complexities in healthcare, the complexities in right to repair and intellectual property, the difference between a schematic, copyright, and source code of a program. I can't discuss the difference between source code and a schematic and discuss everything else that I need to discuss in 2 effing minutes. It doesn't work. And trying to take a complex argument and break it down so that it can be understood in 2 minutes by people that likely won't understand the content of what you're saying, likely you're going to mix it up and have to worry in your head, is this person going to hear something that I didn't say? How do I respond to the thing that they're going to hear that I didn't say inside of 2 minutes? How do I leave a mark in 2 minutes? It's just fucked up, and it's not really the way that any of this, in my opinion, is supposed to work. And it just kind of, I don't know. We have to find a way to meet legislators that are interested in the bill, but more importantly, we have to find a way to meet people who are willing to put it for a vote, and above all, people who are actually willing to listen to us before hearings. And I think that's going to mean more people like Don W. visiting their local legislatures and speaking to people and, getting meetings with their local politicians beforehand. Maybe they're ignoring me because I'm a normal person. Maybe they're ignoring me because I'm an asshole. Maybe they're ignoring me because I'm not a resident of Maryland. Makes sense. But often they don't respond to their own constituents, and that is a big part of it. And I think that we need to come up with a more organized way of getting more and more people to email their legislators, more and more people to schedule meetings and show up. Because I think if we were at a point where, let's say, we had a chat room for each state, this is something that I'm looking to get into, by the way. I want to have a chat room for each individual state, genuinely organize this. Everybody who is in that chat room sends an email at this time. Then everybody who's in this chat room will schedule a meeting at this legislative building at this time. If you have 90 people standing outside your office, at that point you just gotta listen to your constituents. So that's where I think I'm going with this, because I'm really starting to become tired with this pretend democracy, constitutional republic. I know, for the fucking pedantic people out there that want to email me at 9 o'clock thinking they're all smart about it. I already fucking know that, but this whole pretend democracy thing, this whole pretend constitutional republic, where we pretend that because we listen to you and take you out of context for a minute and 30 seconds to 2 minutes before a buzzer goes off, that you have any say in your government, that part's not going to work, in my opinion. What we need to do is actually find a way to have real effing conversations with people, proper conversations, robust conversations, robust of the mind, not of the wallet, before it gets to a point of a hearing. Because the hearing, it really does seem to just be a piece of theater. That's it for today, and I will leave a link below to a Slack channel that you can join. It already has chat rooms set up for each individual state, and we're going to start organizing this like it matters. We're going to start having conversations like this matters, because it does matter. And the indignity of what you have to go through in these hearings, only for this pretend show that someone listened to you, that's not doing it anymore. That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something.